Australia is one of our strongest allies. We have the AUKUS relationship, which is key to their national security. It's key to our industrial base, so we can continue to build subs. Terribly important. Interesting thing with Australia is we have a free trade agreement with Australia. We don't have tariffs. We even have one of the few industrial countries, we have a trade surplus with Australia. So Ambassador Greer, can you explain to me how it helps America's national security or our trading balance when we have, and I loved your fancy Greek formula, which was basically bad math on steroids formula, how with the trade surplus, with this strong relationship, Australia got hit with a 10% tariff as well?
Senator, Australia has the lowest rate available under the new program. They ban imports of American beef.
Ambassador, excuse me. There is a trade, we already have a free trade agreement. We have a trade surplus. So getting the least bad, why did they get whacked in the first place?
We're addressing the $1.2 trillion deficit, the largest in human history that President Biden left us with. We should be running up the score in Australia.
Ambassador Greer, answer the question on Australia. We have a trade surplus with Australia. We have a free trade agreement. Why? They are an incredibly important national security partner. Why were they whacked with a tariff?
Senator, despite the agreement, they ban our beef, they ban our pork, they're getting ready to impose measures on our digital companies.
With your Greek letter formula, the fact that we have a trade surplus.
We have a global tariff on everyone. We're trying to address the $1.2 trillion deficit that Biden left us with.
I think that answer, sir, you're a much smarter person than that answer. The idea that we are going to whack friend and foe alike, and particularly friends, with this level is both, I think, insulting the Australians, undermines our national security, and frankly makes us not a good partner going forward.
Elena, the clock ticking towards midnight. What is the latest messaging right now?
Well, we've actually really heard many of the president's top advisors doing kind of a tour of the shows this morning and really trying to emphasize that the president is willing to negotiate on one part, but also how many countries are coming to the White House to try and have negotiations with them. Take a listen to what some of his top advisors said today.
Right now, we're managing a massive number of requests for negotiations. It's actually logistically quite challenging just to go through them.
The negotiations are the result of the massive inflow of inbound calls to come and negotiate. Had nothing to do with the market.
We are having negotiations with all kinds of countries at this time. We will have the president's plan go into effect, and we're coupling that with immediate negotiations with our partners.
I think that last quote there from the U.S. Trade Rep, Jamieson Greer, is really important to note that even as the president is having these different talks with different world leaders, we know that he spoke with Japan's prime minister. He spoke with the leader of South Korea, both of which we actually heard the director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, say that the president and his administration will be prioritizing in some of these negotiations. I think Jamieson Greer's point was really notable, though, that, you know, even though they're having these talks, these tariffs are still set to go into effect by midnight. And that's been a key question, that if you're going to have these conversations, if it does sound like these different countries are coming to the table with good and potential plans for how they could try to find an off-ramp to these tariffs, would the president perhaps think about holding off on the implementation of these? But as we've been hearing from his top advisors today, that does not seem to be the plan. And look, but when I have these conversations with White House officials, Trump administration officials, about some of the behind the scenes on this, they say they really want these different world leaders to bring good plans to the table. Only then will the president make deals. And so I think we have to see really what those could yield. But many of them saying it won't happen immediately necessarily because he's going to be working them out in these different conversations with different leaders. Boris, Brianna?
Elena Treen, live for us in the press briefing room. We'll come back to you as that briefing gets underway. Thank you so much. Let's get some perspective now with Paul Krugman. He's an economist and distinguished professor at the City University of New York. He's a Nobel Prize winning economist who is also the author of the Paul Krugman Substack. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. When you hear the administration claim that they have dozens of countries reaching out looking to strike new trade deals, but they'll only accept the good ones, what's the likelihood that the administration gets those done quickly enough to try to stabilize markets?
I don't even think it's a matter of speed. Question is, what kind of deals are we talking about? The starting point has to be that the whole administration accusation about other countries, doing unfair stuff and imposing high tariffs is false. I mean, think about the European Union. The average tariff that the European Union imposes on U.S. products is about 1.7%. It's nothing. So when they say, well, they're going to offer us a deal, what are they going to offer? The formula that was used to determine those tariff rates bore no relationship to the actual policies of foreign countries. So yeah, everybody's calling and say, how do we get out of this? But it's not, the administration hasn't left them any actionable stuff. They haven't given them anything, hasn't given other countries anything they can do to bring those tariffs off. So what is supposed to be happening here? I think this is all just trying to somehow, talk up the markets for a day or two.
So you're not persuaded by any of the talk from the administration that they're looking to address non-tariff trade barriers, things like restrictions on, you're shaking your head, you don't buy the arguments from them?
No, when we talk, again, I like to talk about the European Union because that's the biggest other economy out there. China is a different story, but the European Union, there's no hidden trade barriers. European Union is absolutely as transparent as we are. We know what they do. There's no secret quotas. There's no hidden tariffs. There's no hidden subsidies. The administration says, well, value-added taxes, which the European Union has, but those are not protectionist. And those are a fundamental revenue source, and they're not going to give it up. So this is all taking place in a kind of fantasy world in which other countries, in which the many countries that are part of the European Union are all part of some hidden conspiracy to keep out U.S. products, and that's just not happening.
Well, you say China is a different story. I wonder how you then, if you were advising the administration, would address their bending or ignoring of some of the rules of trade, their currency manipulation, et cetera. Would tariffs be the answer there?
No, tariffs are, there's a lot of reasons to say that we need to take we need to treat China as a problem. China is among other things, they're a potential, they're not our friends, and we don't want to be dependent from them on strategic goods. But that's a case for targeting. It's a case for subsidies to strategic industries. It's a case actually for things like the CHIPS Act, which was the Biden administration initiative. There's no reason why we should want to put a blanket tariff. We don't want to switch production of low-wage downstream industries like clothing from China to the United States. And by the way, if we want to have an effective policy against China, we don't want to alienate the whole rest of the world. We don't want to take countries that are doing nothing wrong and were our allies until 3 months ago, and make them the enemy and prevent any kind of unified front against China.
So what would you say to folks, for example, in the Rust Belt, who over the last 40 years have seen their communities completely gutted by factories moving overseas to produce that kind of low-skill labor, the clothes and the very simple sort of plastic things that the U.S. has imported now for decades from China? What do you say to folks who argue that bringing some of that manufacturing back would revitalize their communities?
Look, we had a policy. If you look at the CHIPS Act, at the Inflation Reduction Act, both of those had a lot of Buy American provisions. They actually subsidized manufacturing and were specifically aimed to help build manufacturing in left-behind regions of the United States. And we're actually getting a fair bit of traction. We've had record investment in manufacturing in the last couple of years. So this is how you actually do it. This is not a kind of throw a tariff that just kind of randomly creates jobs, but won't do remotely enough to bring back these communities. You want to actually have a policy that is aimed at doing the goal. And so, and some things we probably shouldn't be doing, but we can get other things. And there was a lot of successful industrial policy in the United States in the last couple of years. And this tariff is just not going to do the trick.
What is going to be the effect long-term, do you think, of these tariffs on alliances between the United States and other countries, as you suggested, doing potential harm to our friends?
Well, it's a tremendously destructive thing. We have the fact is it matters that the tariffs are all based upon untrue claims about what our friends are doing. If you're going to say that to Europe, to Canada, that you are villains when they know perfectly well that they're not doing any of the things they're being accused of, then are they still going to be our allies? I mean, the United States has very quickly, in a matter of months, turned itself into one of the biggest rogue actors on the international scene. We are not going to be considered to be part of the free world by our erstwhile allies. We're certainly not part of the set of countries you can deal with, because among other things, Trump is tearing up a lot of trade agreements, including some agreements that he himself signed during his first term in office. So if the United States is a country that accuses you of, makes false accusations and then rips up its agreements on the basis of those false claims, who wants to deal with us?